And this is something that I really like to do because I have like this little, something's wrong with my neck. My jawline, like it feels like it's What's up everyone? Welcome back to my channel. So if you are new here, my name is Delana and today we're going to be talking about highlighting and contouring. So if you are someone who has some questions about like what's a bronzer, what's the difference between a bronzer and a contour, what's a sculpting powder, what's a highlight, what's a luminizer, and everything in between, or if half of those things don't even sound familiar to you, this might just be the video for you. So if you want to learn some tips and tricks and techniques on how to highlight and contour, then let's just get right into it. Alright, so before we get into the application, let's talk about brushes first. So whenever you're applying bronzer or sculpting powder or anything like that, whenever you're looking for the right brush, you want to think about if it comes to a point. Or it doesn't even have to come to a point, but it just needs to round out and get smaller at some point. So like these brushes, for example, the number 40 from Sephora collection, even though it is a big fluffy brush, like these bristles, it kind of comes to a flat point, like right here. You see what I'm saying? This brush is what I've been using to apply my bronzer recently. It's really great to kind of get in there and create a line. You're not going to get the most precision out of it, which is why I like to use it for my bronzer rather than my contour. This is another brush. This one is from Real Techniques that I like to use for my bronzer. Sometimes it's their multitasking face brush. Sometimes for a while I would even reach for this brush. This is from Blackheart Cosmetics or something. It just needs to get smaller at some point to give you precision. So whether that's round or if it's circular or whatever it may be, you just want to look for something that tapers in. For my bronzer today, I'm going to be trying a new brush though, because I just got this brush kit yesterday. This is the Sephora Collection Advanced Airbrush Set. I just opened it, but it comes in this little case right here. It was on sale. It was on their weekly wows for like half the price. So I was like, I have to get that. So I did. I'm going to be using their airbrush powder brush because this is exactly the kind of brush that I was talking about. I'm just going to try it for the first time today and kind of see how I like it, but I just wanted to give you some other brush options as well. So there is a difference between bronzing and contouring. So bronzers are going to bring warmth and color. They will bring dimension as well, but bronzers, let me show you for example. This is a bronzer. This is the Hula bronzer from Benefit Cosmetics. And then this is a sculpting powder. So if you put these two up next to each other, you can see that the Kevyn Aucoin sculpting powder looks almost like it has a little bit of a gray undertone, and the bronzer has a little bit more of like a warm red yellow undertone. I don't know how much you can tell in the camera, but there's a big difference in real life. Let me give you another example. So this is a very well-loved bronzing kit from NYX Cosmetics. So well-loved that it is broken in half. The top came off of it, but I have this one over here in a different palette. I've just pulled it out, but these two are a great example. As you can see, this would be more of like your bronzing shade, and this one has a little bit more of a gray undertone, so this would be your contouring shade. So those are just a couple of examples to kind of get you to start to see the difference between bronzers and contours. Bronzers are going to bring warmth. They will bring a little bit of dimension because they are darker than your skin tone, but the sculpting powders, like the contours and stuff like that, since they have those gray undertones, they're meant to mimic the appearance of shadows. So you have warmth and color, and then you have shadows. Contouring is really what you want to do whenever you're looking to change the appearance of your facial features. So whether that means like cinching in your nose, or really cinching in the cheekbones, or kind of cutting the jawline a little bit, like if you want to cut down your jawline, if you have a more wide set jawline, or if you want to round out your jawline, or anything like that, or really? I'm going to start out with a bronzer. You can start with bronzer or contour. It's really kind of personal preference. I like to start with bronzer first to see how much dimension and shape that brings to my face on its own, and then if I feel like I need any additional shaping, I'll go in with a sculpting powder. Quite honestly, I don't like to change my facial features. I like to embrace what I have and who I am. And so I don't typically like to do that, but that's not any shame or shade to those who do contour and use it to change the appearance of your facial features. You know, if you're insecure about something, or you just like the way that you look better with a slimmer nose or a different shaped jawline or whatever. I mean, this isn't going to completely change your facial features. Obviously, it just gives the illusion of doing so, but I don't really feel like I need to contour, basically. So taking that airbrush powder brush, I'm going to go into the Hoola bronzer first. The main thing really with anything in makeup, but especially whenever you're doing bronzing and contouring and stuff like that, make sure that you always take a small amount of product at a time and you slowly build up that product. I find that the biggest mistake that people make is they just take too much product at a time and then they can't control the product. So what you don't want to do is this. Don't do that. That is so much product on the brush. Like, I'm gonna freaking dust that off. It's so much. I would never be able, I mean, I could, but it would be so much harder to blend that out. And I find that that's such a habit for us to just kind of like swirl our brushes in there, you know? It's just, I don't know why, it's like human nature for us to do that. Whenever I am picking up eyeshadow, bronzer, contour, really any kind of powder product, this is all I do to pick it up. One little tap. That's it. And so now I'm going to hold my brush at the end of the handle here. You don't want to be all the way up here really close, because then you'll be too heavy-handed and it can make the product look really blotchy and patchy and unblended. The softer your touches, and you'll hear me say this so many times in my videos, the softer your touches, the softer your blend will be in anything that you're doing. Anything. So starting with my hand all the way back here on the brush, I'm going to start to brush that into the natural hollows of my cheek. So what I mean by that is, if you suck in, you want the bottom line. You don't want to stick your brush in here because then it'll be too low. You want the bottom line of your bronzer and contour to follow that hollow right there. So I'm actually going to place my brush a little bit above, kind of hugging right underneath that cheekbone. And that's where I'm placing my bronzer so that the bottom line follows that line right there. Picking up my bronzer. I'm just doing back and forth motions this way to start to chisel out that line, and I'm just barely touching my face, like I'm being so light-handed. And I will hold my bronzer up here so that you can see how many times I dip back into that pan, because it's better to dip back in 5 million times and slowly build it up than to swirl your brush and take a ton of product and then try to blend it out. So back and forth to chisel out the line to start to get that shape. And then I'll start to do little swirling motions to start to bring it up onto the cheekbone. And up onto the temple. Whenever I get back down here, I tend to do like little back and forth motions. You just want to make sure that you're pulling it upwards. Don't do really heavy circular motions, like I'm doing little tiny light motions up on top of my cheekbone just to diffuse that color up, but I'm never doing it in a way that it'll pull it down onto my jawline, because then I lose definition in my face overall, because I'm diminishing that jawline rather than pulling it up and getting that lift. So with your bronzer, you want to make sure that you kind of bring it all over the face. So I'm going to bring that all around the perimeters of my face, and this time I'm taking it on the side of my brush rather than the tip so that I get a softer diffusion. So I'm going to start at the hairline, really work it into that hairline first so that we can't see where that bronzer starts. And then slowly bring it down onto the rest of the forehead. Wow, I really like this brush. I'm so glad that I got this. Really, your main goal in bronzing and contouring is that you just don't want to see where it starts and where it stops. It should all just look really soft and diffused. Same thing here. Another thing is make sure that you bring it all the way back into your hairline. The last thing you want is for your bronzer to start like right here. You know what I'm saying? And then people are like, why is there like a brown spot on her cheek? And you will always have one side, I mean, at least for me, and I find with most people, they have one side that they always struggle to blend a little bit more than the other side, and for me, that's definitely my left side of my face. And so I just make sure to be extra light-handed and take a little bit more time on this side to get a really, really soft blend. So you see I'm hugging right underneath that cheekbone there, like I can literally feel my cheekbone. Taking it on the side of my brush, blending it into that hairline. Oh my gosh, this is definitely my new favorite bronzer brush. Like, what the heck? So freaking good. And then I like to take a little bit of bronzer on the very tip of my brush, just the tiniest amount, and just press that right onto the sides of my nose, just to give a little bit of shape and definition. I'm not really like trying to slim my nose. I'm just trying to bring that color all throughout the face and shape my nose a little bit, because I'm wearing a full coverage foundation and it takes a lot of natural dimension out of the face, so just bringing this onto the sides of my nose brings a little bit more dimension into the face again. And then taking that on the tip of my brush again, I'm going to bring that down onto my jawline. Not only does this start to bring that shape and dimension into the face, but it also balances the color that we have here all throughout the rest of the face. I just touched my lip with that. If you want to define your jawline, you want to put it right underneath that jawline. I see a lot of people put it on the jawline to try to define the jawline, and that doesn't make any sense, because then you're shrinking the jawline. You're bringing that jawline in and diminishing that definition. You want to bring it right underneath to chisel out that jawbone. Bring it around, kind of hook around the jawline here. You're just basically following your natural bone structure. And there's our bronzer. So now let's do a little bit of contouring. Now, like I said, I don't do contouring on an everyday basis because I don't feel it necessary. But if you are somebody who is interested in contouring, I'm gonna dive into it a little bit. So here is the sculpting powder from Kevin Aquan. This is the contour book. It has 2 creams, 1 cream contour and 1 cream highlighter, and then it has 2 powders, obviously a powder contour and a powder highlighter. Now, whether you are using liquids, creams, or powders, the same principles will work, where you will do the bronzer first and kind of all over and diffuse that really nicely, and then you'll go in with your contour and just do it in specific areas, just like I'm about to do, but you'll just be doing it with a cream rather than a powder. So I'm going to take this brush. I like how it comes to a hard point right here, so I'm just going to be using the very tip of that to be very precise with my sculpting powder. So I'm just going to take that on the tip of my brush and place this right into basically the lowest point, like the deepest point in the hollow of my cheek, to further define that. And definitely with contouring, a little bit goes a long way. Like, you don't want to apply a lot. You should not see the product, you should just see the effect of the product. So this one, I'm gonna blend it out into the bronzer, but I'm not gonna blend it as far up or out. Really just keeping it in that deepest hollow. See how much more shadow that has there? How it looks a little bit more chiseled than this side does. So we're just going to do the same thing on the other side. And then if you really want to chisel out your nose, you can take that on the side. A lot of times it's a better idea to take a smaller fluffy brush, like an eyeshadow brush. Work with the size of the area that you're working in. So like obviously our nose is a lot smaller area. So I'm just going to take that on the very tip of my brush, and then following the natural bone structure here, I'm going to bring that contour powder all the way down. Just like that, and very, very lightly. You do not want a heavy contour on your nose, otherwise it looks really, really obvious. And then sometimes, so once we've followed our bone structure to chisel out that nose. It can look a little bit harsh, like right now it looks a little bit harsh, and I can tell because it almost looks a little bit dirty because it has that gray undertone to it, so it's natural because you're trying to create a shadow, and with those gray undertones sometimes it can look honestly straight up like dirt. So whenever it starts to look a little bit weird like that, I just take my sponge or brush, whatever I applied my foundation or concealer with, and I'll just press it over that, and this will kind of blend it out and mend it into the rest of the look. See how that instantly softened it? So now it looks super, super natural, and it looks like my nose is just sculpted that way. Huh. So then you can do the exact same thing, and this is something that I really like to do because I have like this little, something's wrong with my neck. My jawline, like it feels like it's, most people, like their skin will like tuck in underneath, and it's not fat, it's like it's just the way that my skin is. I mean, I have a little bit of fat there, but just the way that my skin is, like even whenever I was like teeny tiny, like super skinny, it was like my jawline was like still connected to my neck. I just don't have a super defined jawline, so sometimes I do like to take a little bit of that sculpting powder, and I'm going back to that same brush. Oh, this is the BH Cosmetics number 4 brush, by the way. It came in this little kit here. I got it at Riley Rose, and I'm just going to take a little bit of that sculpting powder, and I'm just going to go right underneath that jawline, keeping it really tight underneath the jawline to define it even more. And then sometimes you can do like little pulling motions downwards to diffuse it. This is something that I think is really great in photos, especially because I know that after I have contoured or even like done bronzer underneath my jawline, and I'll go and like take a picture and I'll be like, my jawline looks really chiseled, and I'm like, how did I do that, you know? And then I realized, I'm like, oh, I did like more contouring that day or whatever it may be, because it really does make a big difference in photos because it brings so much dimension to your face. So I do highly recommend contouring and bronzing and stuff like that, especially if you're going to take pictures or something. Another thing is, this isn't as common nowadays, but it did used to be really common, where people would take a lighter powder like this. Now this is a satin powder. This is from the NYX palette, and this is a satin powder, so it has a little bit of light reflection to it, but it's definitely not a shimmer like this guy. So I'm gonna take that on, this is a Sephora Artist Precision Blush Brush. This is just gonna help to bring a little bit more light underneath the eyes. So I'm just gonna take that on the side of my brush and pop that right underneath the eyes. You can do this before you bronze if you want, but this just brings a little bit more light underneath the eyes and brings a little bit more dimension to the face. I'm just doing a very light amount of this because we don't want it to look super heavy, but I do love the effect of this. See how it's very subtle, but this side looks like a little bit brighter and lighter, and it kind of comes forward a little bit more? That's what you want. And then you can also do that by taking it down the center of the nose. This is a really great way, especially if you have oily skin and you don't want to bring shimmer onto your face because you're like, girl, I got enough natural glow, you know what I'm saying? This is a great way to get the same effect of like all that dimension in your face without adding extra shimmer. Just take like a matte or a satin powder like this guy. The way that you see everyone applying their highlights, do that with a matte lighter powder, you know, a powder that's lighter than your skin tone. So you can bring that onto the Cupid's bow and the chin. You just want to think about placing this in all the high points of the face. So like here, the nose, the forehead if you want to, the Cupid's bow, and the chin, like all those places. Some people even like to place it onto their jawline if they want to bring their jawline out even more. Just pop it right there, and that kind of pops out the jawline a little bit. Anywhere that the light would naturally catch, you're just basically enhancing that. Like that. So now let's do that on the other side. And then if you want to add a luminizer, so this technically, I know that all the shimmers have been known to be called highlighters because that's what everyone's just called them, but technically these are your highlighters. Any shade that is lighter than your skin tone that's bringing light into the face, those are your highlighters, and anything that reflects light that has any kind of shimmer or glow to it is going to be a luminizer. So that's how you can differentiate that these are highlights and this is a luminizer. So the luminizer is going to have that shimmer to it. So I guess I'll just use this luminizer from the NYX Pro Contour palette, and I like to use mine with This brush, a lot of people like to use a smaller brush like this guy. So this is a BH Cosmetics number 5 brush from that same kit, and then this is another BH Cosmetics 126 brush. So this is what I've been using recently because I really like to apply my luminizers in a way that it kind of looks like it's all over, like it's giving like that natural glow all over, and you don't really see where it starts and where it stops, but we're still applying it to just the very highest points of the face. So taking this guy right here, I'm going to take that on the side of my brush, kind of shake off the excess, and I'm just going to pop that. Notice again, I'm holding my brush all the way at the end of the handle and bring that up onto the brow bone. Sometimes I'll even bring it just right here. I usually do that before I apply my eyeshadow, but I'm already wearing eyeshadow obviously. Just kind of wiggling it back and forth. You don't even have to wiggle. If you just put a little bit more pressure, it'll diffuse the brush bristles a little bit more, kind of spread them out. Look at how pretty that is. Just adds such a nice glow. So you're really just following this bone structure right here. And I'll even bring it up underneath the eye area a little bit so it doesn't look like shine. And then matte. Kind of blend it over that bronzer a little bit. And then I like to take that down the center of my nose, but I'm not trying to look like Rudolph here. I just like a little touch of light right there. Little touch of glow. Cupid's bow, obviously. And then chin. So then lastly, I'm just gonna apply some blush. This blush I've had for freaking ever and I will never stop loving it, but this is the Milani Baked Blush in the shade Coralina. I'm just gonna take that on a loose angled brush and brush that right on top. I always like my blush to be last because I feel like it's just a nice finishing touch and it kind of mends everything together. I'll just be super generous with that and just kind of throw it all over. I also like to do that because that way it blends over the contour and the bronzer and it gives it a little bit more color, like a little bit more of a red or pinkish or coral tone, whatever you're using. And then I like to do it after my highlight because then the highlight doesn't look like a white stripe on the top of my cheek, but it looks more of like a glow within. Alright you guys, so here is the finished look. Here is our highlighted and contoured face, and I freaking love it. I have not done like a full highlight and contour look on myself in a while, so it's pretty cool to see myself this way. It definitely adds a lot of shape and dimension into the face, and I really like it. It's still not something that I will do every day of my life because your girl likes to sleep, but yes, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video and I hope that you learned something new. Please share with me what you would like to see next down in the comments below and I will be sure to get back to you. And before you leave, make sure you check out some of my other videos here and see what you've missed because we've been having a lot of fun on this channel. And make sure you hit subscribe right here so that you don't miss anything else. And I will see you guys in my next video, which will be on Wednesday. And it will be a wear test. Bye! Oh my gosh, what is going on with my bangs right now? Look at this. What is this?